Okay, hello and welcome to everybody to our webinar, our new webinar, What Makes a Competitive Production Finance Application. I'd like to acknowledge that I'm moderating this online webinar, and I'd like to start where we always like to start, which is to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land I stand on today, the Gadigal clan. I also acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands on which you all gather today. I also pay respects to all the elders, those past and present, and those who are emerging, for they hold the knowledge, traditions, and culture of this land. And finally, I extend my deep respect and appreciation to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are joining us today. So my name is Andrea Ulbrick. I'm one of the screen investment managers at Screen New South Wales. I'm also a filmmaker, so I kind of know what you're going through, the good and the bad. I'm so glad you are joining us today. Today we're going to fill you in on some of the tips of the trade and hear from our two fabulous producers, three if you include me. And we really want to help you understand, I guess, you know, the bits and pieces that go towards making a production finance application really, really zing. As you can see today, we have the inimitable Darren from Blackfella Films. Thanks for joining us today. Hi, Darren.
Thanks for having me, Andrea.
Most welcome. For those that don't know, Darren is director of Blackfella Films. He's been director since 2000. He produced award-winning documentary, factual and drama programs. We're thrilled to have him today. He's so vastly experienced and he's absolutely one of the loveliest people in the film and TV industry here in Australia and perhaps the world. This year has been huge for Darren. He needs a big lie down. Not only has he just finished producing a range of incredible content for the ABC, including the second series of Total Control with Deborah Mailman and Rachel Griffiths. We're going to talk some more about that. And for those that haven't yet seen it in the supermarket, don't forget to get your copy of the Woman's Weekly, and you can read a bit more about that fantastic relationship between Deb and Rachel. He's also just finished the feature documentary Step into Paradise, which aired on the ABC on Tuesday night, and that's about the iconic fashion designers Jenny Key and Linda Jackson. It is absolutely exquisite, and we'll talk some more about that when we get down to that section. And he's also just made Books That Made Us, a 3-part factual series about Australian literature. But that's not all. For SBS, Darren is producing the historical...
Sounds like my eulogy.
No, sorry.
No, I'm joking.
Look, we'll punch through it. Look, it's also worth mentioning that in 2019, Total Control Season 1 premiered in the primetime strand at the Toronto International Film Festival. The series was awarded the 2020 MIPCOM Diversify TV's Excellence Award for representation of race and ethnicity, which is really just such a tremendous global award. And in his spare time, when he's not cooking up a storm or walking his beautiful dogs, Frank and Bill, who star a lot on Instagram, Darren also serves on the boards of ACME and the Sydney Film Festival. You must be tired.
That makes me sound tired.
Yes. Well, I think you do need a good lie down. Next, we have the wonderful Lauren Edwards. She's working with us now as a screen investment manager. Lucky us. She's also a very talented film and TV producer. She's got over 15 years of experience in the industry. Her long-form credits include Diary of an Uber Driver for ABC TV, the internationally acclaimed series Clever Man, which we all loved, the Channel 7 rating smash The Secret Daughter, another beloved series, and the fabulous feature film The Sapphires, which won 11 ACTA awards. Lauren's also produced many short films that have been highly successful internationally. The Amber Amulet, which won the Crystal Bear for Best Short Film at the Berlin Film Festival in 2013. Bear, directed by Nash Edgerton, was selected for official competition at the Cannes Film Festival in 2011 and Sundance Film Festival 2012. Thrilled to have today.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure.
I need to put my bio down. It's really awkward listening to it live.
Look, it's helpful for people listening to hear the depth and extent of both your experiences. So please bear with us on that one. Look, before we get onto the main game, there's just a little bit of housekeeping to get through. We've got a comments box down the bottom, and you're welcome to tell us who you are and where you're from. And then we can get to know each other a bit. This webinar has live captioning. These are provided by AI Media. To access, you'll see a link below the video that says live captioning down there. And if you're having any trouble with Crowdcast, it's best viewed through Chrome. So try and use Chrome. I hope I'm using Chrome. I don't think I am. And if you'd like to ask a question, there's a separate box there. It's radically called Ask a Question. Just type your question into the box and we'll be checking in from time to time. Our colleague Amelia is also here behind the scenes, and she's going to be posting links and documents throughout the webinar. So let's begin. The aim of this session, as I said, is to lift the lid on the essentials and fundamentals of applying for production finance with Screen New South Wales. We just want to give you a bit of a full-blown, crystal clear context of applying for state government finance, which is highly competitive. It's why the forms are so detailed. The money is really, you really are competing against some really exceptional producers to get that money, which is why there's so many questions. So why don't we just kick it off with the basics? I'm going to throw to Darren first, just to talk about what you raised, Darren, as being, one of the most important things when it comes to dealing with your investment manager and the agency itself, and that's communication. Just give us an idea about why you think having clear communication is a necessary skill.
Yeah, look, I think you're absolutely right, Andrea. And look, I've had a relationship with Andrea in her role at the agency, in a really fundamental and critical role in kind of financing our projects. But I guess what I would say to people early on is, apart from just doing all the things that you should do as a good producer, like looking at the guidelines, staying up to date with the terms of trade, looking at other past decisions, looking at what's been funded, why it's been funded, like getting a sense of what is competitive out there, I think is really key. But look, the biggest thing for us is, and we've been very lucky that we've had a great relationship with Screen New South Wales over many years. And I think fundamentally it's making contact with your investment manager, being really sure about how ready your project is, being really clear about what you're asking them. And because what they can do, they're going to be such an ally in helping shepherd your project from the very moment that they receive the application. So rather than get a faceless application, I would suggest that you have that good relationship with your investment managers, because really they're another partner in your production. And they're not just top-up money. That critical money is the make or break of your project happening. And it's also, they can be so informative and helpful about the timing of your application, what's coming. They know all of that stuff. And I just think the earlier that you talk to them, when you've got really clear information, when you've got your documents ready, because they can be so helpful to you in, another eye over something that you're doing is always really wonderful. And they're there to help us, but also they're the shepherds of this pot of money, which, as Andrea said, is so competitive and as it should be. And so I guess just that relationship has been really intrinsic for us, and it's been a really valuable one, really, for my whole career. And, Screen New South Wales has been a partner with us on so many productions. But yeah, it's always been a really open, transparent dialogue. And it's telling the agency as well, not just the good stories, it's asking them for help. It's, they can help. They're seeing more people sometimes than you're seeing. They know other creatives. So I just think, I can't say and can't speak highly enough of the relationship that we have with them, but also the real value that they add and help and shape your project and to get that critical financing.
Yeah, look, that's absolutely true. Thank you so much, Darren. Lauren, have you got anything that you'd like to add?
Yeah,
you're now on the inside and you've been on the outside looking in.
Yeah.
What works for you?
I think, just adding to what Darren said, if you're emerging or, mid-level practitioner, don't be intimidated. We're just other human beings on the end of a phone or, an email. So just pick up the phone or email us and, arrange to have a meeting so that we can, chat through your project, and you don't need to come to the meeting doing a big song and dance pitch. You can just come, tell us what it's about, who it's for, how you're trying to put the finance together. Ask all the questions you want to ask, and importantly, listen to the questions that the investment manager is asking you in return, because sometimes, we're often pointing to areas of your project that we think you might need to address before you come into us for funding.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's really critical, because there is so much to get your head around. We because we are assessing every day, we can spot an area of weakness. So don't be afraid if you don't understand quite what we're asking. Just ask again, and we'll help you clarify what we're really looking for. And there's also, when you look at the application form, there's a lot of small print under most of the questions, and I think people often miss those that fine print, because that's a problem to some of the questions that we're asking, but we can get around some of that. Do you want to just sorry, Darren, go.
Oh no, I was just going to say, and I think really key to be able to, for you guys to be able to help producers is really going through that application in detail. Often I know it's like, oh God, we don't know the answers to that yet, or we haven't thought about that yet, but actually that is our jobs to think about all of those things, because then the agency is best placed to help you. So I would suggest, I know they're onerous and I know they feel, but the reason they are is because the agency is the custodian of this precious money. So I think just putting the time in to really go through that application, and then of course, as you said, Lauren, come to you guys with questions, but come to them having really kind of done the homework beforehand, I guess.
Yeah, that's absolutely true, because I think people need to keep in mind that Lauren and I and the other investment managers, Sophia Golan and Bobby Romeo, we do attend the advisory committee meeting, and we represent and are there to answer any questions that are raised by our advisory committee. And they really scrutinise the papers. So they in turn will also look for any areas of weaknesses or something that needs further clarification. So by all means, give us all the ammunition we need to help answer those sorts of questions, because we so much want your project to get through. And we do have moments where we might actually have to say, can I come back to you on that one? But mostly, by the time we've got to the advisory committee meeting, we have really delved deeply into the project, to the track record, into all the aspects that we ask you, including marketing and who the other investors are. And so just know that the information we're asking you for is absolutely fundamental, even if it seems hectic, which it is. Lauren, do you want to just remind people about what we can and can't?
Yeah, I'll quickly go through it, because obviously there's a lot of this stuff that's in our terms of trade or in our guidelines, but just for the purposes of today, so we can fund the following formats: feature films, content-rich factual and documentary TV or web programs or series, adults and children's television drama and narrative comedy, including series, mini-series, web series and telemovies, animation productions, and creative interactive screen entertainment. So the things that we don't fund are things like infotainment, lifestyle, travel, magazines, sports, education, game shows, and other sort of magazine-style productions, current affairs, news programs, community television, shorts and short features, so anything under 60 minutes, or projects being developed as part of a course or study. And I just also say that we do fund shorts sometimes through other special initiatives, but they just can't come through our production finance, which is what we're focusing on today. And also a big thing for us is that, we receive applications, and then we have to go through the first stage of assessment, which is seeing if they're eligible or not. And one thing that people often trip up before we even get to kind of creative assessment is that the productions need to be fully financed. Apart from us or Screen Australia or another screen agency, you need to have the rest of your finance in place before you apply to us, and all of that paperwork, all of the deals in place, because otherwise you don't meet that eligibility kind of criteria. So we often see, if we get 20 or 30 applications, in a round, we might lose, sort of 10 of those because they don't meet those eligibility requirements in terms of having all their finance in place. So that's a big thing to point out, because it's a lot of work, as we said, to go through, and then to kind of fall at the first hurdle can be, difficult for people.
Yeah, and it's probably worth mentioning that when someone is deemed ineligible, the project really just gets pushed to the side, and they need to reapply again, which I think some people find really difficult to accept, because we just have a very clear process, and we can't just sort of have a backlog of ineligible projects that we can bring back in. The responsibility is of the producer to figure out what the aspects were that made it ineligible, then plug those gaps and plug them with paperwork.
And just on that point, it's probably good for people to talk about, like, obviously, that's why that relationship with the agency is so important, because sometimes things do change, like the ABC, for instance, projects we have, commissioning rounds internally may change for them, or you may, so that is kind of part of the, getting the application together. But I guess talking to you guys, like, of course, the other finance has to be in place, but sometimes you guys are aware that things do slip, don't they?
Yeah,
not
absolutely.
slip, like, of course, the money, like, nothing significant is changing, but it might be the sake of a letter might be coming in 2 weeks, or the AB or SBS can't do something, or your distributor. So I guess that's just where that relationship becomes even more critical, because sometimes things do change slightly, but
and it's never a case of you put the application in and then you'll hear from us in 2 months or whenever after the board meeting. It's like you put that application in, and we'll be talking every week, if not more, until that application goes to the committee for assessment. So it's always an ongoing conversation. Yeah,
and it's probably worth pointing out to people that there are, we've got a timeline that has about 10, I've got it on my wall, 10 dates. And these are dates that we have to hit before we get to that meeting. So that's why we're constantly, it's basically, we kind of go through phase 1 and then phase 2 and then phase 3 of the assessments as we move closer to the advisory committee. So perhaps why don't we turn to the star of the show, the finance plan. I love finance plans. I think they're like a work of art. I know. So it's probably worth saying, and Darren can chip in on this, that no matter how many projects you've worked in for how many years, no finance plan is the same. It's absolutely captures all the distinct elements of the way in which the finance is working. Do you want to just talk through the elements of a finance plan, or an overview? Give an overview from a producer's perspective.
Yeah, like, I guess that is the Bible. Like, apart from the creative, this is the thing that draws the entire project together. It kind of, at a glance, simply sets out who all your partners are, where you see the money's going to come from, the forms of money that it's taking, whether it's a distribution advance, whether it's grant money, either from Screen Australia. I guess it really does, give a really good snapshot of where the money's coming from. Like, they're challenging always to put together. They're the thing that, like, producers, spend a lot of time looking at. What about if we change this? Does that change that? Does that push us over, quote requirements? They are really the Bible. And sometimes it's infuriating because you're so close and you can't find that money. And I guess, I guess getting them right is incredibly important in terms of, like, that's something that I find that lots of, younger producers or emerging producers that we talk to, that sort of challenges around, like, what is the current, rebate? How much can I borrow from the offset lender? Like, all of those things. But it really is the thing that's worth putting time in, because you can find, like, a mistake in it, which Andrea and Lauren will pick up on because they look at many of them, but you kind of don't want to find out that you're short, like, anywhere from, and I've had it happen to me. Suddenly you realize, oh God, that miscalculation, I can't borrow as much money. Oh God, I'm 100 grand short. I'm 200 grand short. So I guess, but just, and look, and I guess getting the pay, why it's also a good document. It makes you know the paperwork that you need to support the numbers that you're putting in there. So it's a really great, in a way, it's a great checklist for everyone, because you can look at that. Have I got my, ABC license agreement? For instance, use Total Control. Have I got the paperwork from the ABC? How much are they investing? What's the difference between the pre-sale and their equity finance? Like, all of those considerations, it makes you think about all the ways that you're getting funding. And also, importantly for producers, it tells you And sometimes it makes you want to weep, but it tells you how much money you might get back at the end of the project or what your entitlements might be. So I think the finance plan really is, a critical document. And also, people should feel free to, speak to Screen Australia, speak to Screen New South Wales about the finance plan, because you really don't want to get tripped up on that sort of key financing aspect.
Yeah. And it also becomes a really key, it becomes a part of the contracting process. It becomes, an official document that's in your PAA. It's not just for the application, process. It needs to be agreed across all the parties, that are involved in your project. So it's a really crucial, element. And obviously, and you would be able to speak to this, Darren, as well, it does evolve, and it can change even, after you've been through an assessment process, or, as a project, if you need to increase your budget, the finance plan will change. All parties need to agree, to that. But it does happen as well. It evolves.
Yeah. While you're there, Lauren, do you want to just explain a bit more about the minimum requirements for applications?
Sure. Sorry, I've just lost my place. So most agencies, us, Screen Australia, any agency, we have a minimum requirement in the, particularly for a film, for example, that we would need a Australian New Zealand distributor attached before that we would even kind of consider assessing the project. That's, again, another eligibility point for us. Screen Australia would also require a sales agent, rest of world sales agent, to be part of that finance plan. And then obviously you might have a pre-sale, which is where you've already, pre-sold a territory to a distributor. So, you might have a pre-sale in there as well. And there's no, set number of pre-sales you can have, because it just depends on how many, territories you've been able to sell before you come in for full finance. And then probably more on films, you might be able to expand on that, Darren, as well. We see gap loans from time to time, which is obviously from a lender. There's really, really high risk loan from a lender or a bank that specialise in this area, and it's basically based on estimates from your sales agent that tell you and the lender, okay, we think we can sell these many territories for this amount, and the lender then agrees to loan you that amount. And like I said, they're really high risk, and they have a lot of fees and interest involved. We probably don't see a lot of that in television now. It's definitely more of a film thing, but does form part of the finance plan from time to time. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thanks, Lauren. Darren, I'm going to throw back to you as we're talking about money. Why don't we talk some more about equity? And, that can be the cream on the cake, as it were. So over many years that Blackfella's been operating, your company has enjoyed substantial back end. I don't need you to reveal your company's secrets, but can you just talk us through, I guess, that element of a finance plan, how Blackfella Films makes a decision about whether or not to put equity into the finance plan? And because I imagine that some of it's about gap, like just filling the gap, but I guess there are some principles that you really need to consider before you make that kind of commitment.
Yeah, I think, look, for us as a company, I think it's all about risk. And Lauren was talking about, those gap loans like that, like in a way you're trying to, evaluate the benefit, like what are we prepared to put in stake to make this project happen? So, and like lenders are doing, I guess, in terms of Blackfella, it's always a risk. That money's always a risk, because potentially, and I guess we should, acknowledge that in a world where there's streaming now, and rights are mostly, especially in television, those rights that were available before to exploit are probably less and less. You're giving those rights away early on. So I think the model is more becoming, back end is becoming less of a potential, but then you are getting upfront fees. So I guess you're getting certainty at an earlier point of what your fees will be. And so, look, we, and we're not a big company like a Matchbox or a Fremantle, or, so like any money that we might consider investing in a project, it has to be something, and I think this is probably to the heart, Andrea, of what you're asking. our projects are projects that we deeply care about, that we're passionate about, that are kind of purpose-led content, that have something to say. And so with that in mind, I guess we're always really committed to the projects that we make. So, that level of equity is sometimes small, and on other projects where we think the net gain for us making it and our passion for it, we'll put in some money to get some returns. But I guess in an environment now, it's becoming more and more challenging, I would say, as a producer, to have those back end returns. So I think, you really do want to try and either shape your budget to accommodate the finance plan, or you really want to make an educated, decision about that equity. But look, when we were a company first starting, our ability to put in equity to things was really tiny, So the balance was, do we cut our fees down, or do we, so I guess that those considerations are always really difficult, but it does mean that you have the potential to participate in a greater degree in the back end if there are returns.
Thank you. That is so clear. So Lauren, probably just a little bit of technical here, just about minimum license fees. Do you want to just rip through that for us? And then we can also look at ratios if you'd like.
Yeah, I will rip through it because it's a little bit technical and boring. And, most of this information is available, particularly on, the Screen Australia website. But so for scripted drama, the minimum license fee or pre-sale from the commissioning platform is $440,000 per broadcast hour. For children's television, it's $100,000 per half hour. Or if it's a co-commission, so for instance, Netflix and ABC, it's $115 per half hour. Doco is a little bit more complicated. For the producer equity program that Screen Australia run, the minimum budget for eligibility is $125 per hour. For a commissioned doco, the minimum budget for eligibility is $250K per hour, and minimum license fee from the commissioning platform is the following: $180,000 per hour, where Screen Australia is funding more than $500K. $150 per hour where Screen Australia is funding $500 or less, and $100,000 per hour where at least 10% of the budget comprises of advances from sales agent for the international market and or international territory pre-sales, and that's irrespective of the level of Screen Australia funding. So that's kind of that. Like I said, it's kind of sounds complicated and there's numbers flying around everywhere, but just check on the website, the Screen Australia website. It's all kind of laid out pretty clearly, so you can get an idea of what you can be estimating within your finance plan when you're putting that together.
In terms of the ratios then, rather than kind of list them all, why don't you just talk to, say, feature film and just remind people, because I think we've got a lot of emerging producers who ring up and they've kind of just plucked a number out of the air. So if you want to just talk us through these.
The ratios for us are pretty simple, and like I said, that they're on our website. And basically, the general overview is we want to know for every dollar that we're going to invest, how much is going to be spent in New South Wales. So, for features, for every dollar we invest, we want to know that you're spending between $10 and $12. So if you're asking us for $100,000, we would want to see that you're going to spend around, 1 to 1.2 million in New South Wales. And if you want to know what New South Wales spend is in terms of, what's eligible and what's not, that's all within our terms of trade. There are a few things that kind of are excluded from that. It's not a lot, but a few sort of interests and things like that. Features are 1 to 10 to 12, one-off docos 1 to 10, documentary series are 1 to 15 to 18, and TV drama, including children's, is 1 to 18 to 25.
Yeah, that's great. Look, we're at the point where we could ask some or answer some questions, but I can't actually see any. Declan? I see you're there. Hi, Declan Caruso. Just let us know, just if you can type the questions in. I haven't heard any. There's one question there. I don't know. Here we go. How do you manage the issues around investors wanting agency involvement before coming on board? Darren?
So is that question, they want investors, I guess, need to know, but do they want the other agencies to be involved, or what sort of investors, I guess, we would need to know?
Well, maybe that's if it's another broadcaster or a sales agent or something. Perhaps.
I'm not quite sure. Perhaps the answer is, for Screen New South Wales, obviously, as we said before, all the finance really needs to be in place. We come in last. We can keep the door ajar for decisions by other screen agencies like Screen Australia or Film Victoria, because we understand that trying to time those decisions at exactly the same time is it's impossible.
And look, maybe I guess, speaking from experience, actually, it just made me think about, like, I know that we've had issues in the past on some of our projects when meeting dates have changed, or the relationship, the nexus of Screen Australia money and the state money has sometimes happened the other way around, and there's wanting to be confirmation. So I know sometimes that juggle, and also when you're trying to work out your timings, I guess, you're nervously wanting to know, when are the Screen Australia dates, what are the Screen New South Wales dates, and you have worked to a timeline and suddenly that shifts. I know that we've been caught in that situation a couple of times where suddenly there's a misalignment of the meetings and one might happen before the other. And I guess that just comes back again, and Screen Australia would say the same. It's that just, you're talking to, as Screen New South Wales, you're talking to Screen Australia. That's the only thing I can think of, that when they change, that conversation is happening between everyone,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, the best case scenario is before we go to the advisory committee meeting, we have confirmation from Screen Australia or Film Victoria, but there are times that confirmation may trickle through. But obviously, if it's a decline from Screen Australia, then the project goes away. But we rarely see that. In fact, I can't think of one example, because I think, Darren, isn't it true that by the time you're very close to the decision-making aspects with the screen agencies, you're getting a pretty clear idea that you're looking good?
Yeah, no, completely. And it's only if there's been, and probably, Lauren, you can talk about this, and Andrea, but when it's a really competitive round and the projects are so competitive that the agencies really see value and merit and they want to support them all. There's been situations where everyone has had a slight reduction in their finance plan, but that's really communicated to you, before the decision's made. And then I guess that's when you go and talk to, especially in television, you go and speak to your broadcaster really quickly. You're having those conversations, and then back to Andrea's point, or then start talking about how you can shape the budget or equity of your own. But as we say, they're always live until everyone's signed off.
Yes, exactly. And that can take quite some time. Probably worth mentioning that by the time you get the decision from the advisory committee meeting, so we have the decisions, but the paperwork has to go up to the Minister for the Arts, Don Howan, and that can take anywhere from 2 weeks to 6 weeks, or sometimes a little bit longer, because he's obviously a very busy minister. But anyway, that's just about timelines. So we've talked about the finance plans. I thought now we'd talk about some of the elements of the application form. And it's probably at this point great to talk about the assessment criteria. And as we said, these are highly competitive. So these are the areas where, as we said earlier, you really need to drill down into the project and answer or address these elements. Lauren, do you want to talk through those, and then we'll get Darren to expand perhaps on contribution to screen culture, because it sounds a bit esoteric, I think.
I'll run through. There's basically 8 assessment criteria that we look at. So I think it's really crucial when you're putting together your application form that you make sure that you're speaking to all of these things and you're covering all of these things in your application. So the first one is qualities of the creative materials relative to the team's creative vision and market intentions and their readiness for production. The potential for innovation in content form, distribution, delivery, or production practices. The track record and level of experience of the key creative team and crew relative to the ambitions of the project. The distribution and marketing plans, the viability of the budget and schedule in terms of realising the project's stated ambitions, the perceived cultural merits of the project, the available Screen New South Wales funds, which we've just talked about in a particular round, and each project's assessed real need for those funds, and the diversity of the Create New South Wales slate. And I would also say that often we see applications where people have gone, I've already done my Screen Australia application, so I'll just chuck in all the paperwork for that. It's all going to be the same. And to that, I would say it is not the same. We are the New South Wales government. We're not the federal government, and we have really specific, New South Wales criteria that we're looking for.
Yeah.
So keep an eye out for that.
Thank you. Thanks, Lauren. So Darren, just in terms of the sorts of elements that producers need to be looking at, can you just talk us a bit about the contribution to screen culture and the screen industry economically, that particular criteria?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it's being really mindful, and it helps you, focus your mind and, when doing the application, about how you're going to crew the production, where are the actors coming from in your production if it's drama, where are the principal places of filming if it's a documentary or factual series. So it's being really mindful that, like, as state money that's coming from New South Wales, that the kind of cultural benefit to the state and why we tell the stories that we tell, and how that makes the state a better place by telling stories that maybe we don't know, or employing lots of people that are from, New South Wales. It also helps you think about the economic benefit. The government wants to fund things that there's an economic lever as well. So the creation of jobs for people in New South Wales. Think about where those people are coming from, like what sort of groups and the diversity of those groups that make up the people that you employ, who's in front of the camera, who's behind the camera. Diversity shouldn't just be a box ticking exercise. It should be something that I think that we all should participate in. I think, I like to think about it more as inclusion, that, like, we include people and we give opportunities to people that, that we see on our street every day, that we see in the shops, the places that we work. I think we've got a little way to go in the screen industry about helping shore up and rebalancing the diversity both behind and the stories that we tell. But yeah, like, really it is a kind of nexus, isn't it? It's like the cultural benefit, that, like, why we should tell this story, what's the benefit to the growing legacy of screen content that the state will have by investing in these projects. But also, you can absolutely give people opportunities and employ lots of people on these productions, and that makes for a vibrant and growing, screen sector. And that's what we all want. That's why I think we all participate in it. And that's the role of the agency, really. It's, the balance between commerce and culture. So absolutely. I think that's, and I really think, people should think strongly about that. It's not our right to get money to make our shows. We really do have to, legitimately argue why we fit the guidelines and why this money is being directed to us.
Fantastic. Thank you, Darren. Lauren, do you want to say something further to that point in terms of, I guess, eligibility? If we're seeing content that has Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander material, what are the questions that the agency is now asking? What are we asking? The team in terms of legitimate collaboration.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think, diversity has evolved, certainly in the time I've been in the industry, from, maybe simply being on screen to, like Darren was saying, behind the camera, key creative roles, your writer, director, producer, that we're really looking for true collaboration. We're not looking, consultation is sort of becoming a bit of a, thing of the past in a way. And I think, the ABC obviously coming out kind of going, nothing about us without us. And that's something that, obviously we're looking at as well.
Yeah, fantastic. And that relates to all areas of underrepresented groups. Including disability. If you're telling a story about a comedian who might have cerebral palsy, the story really needs to involve either writer, director, producer. Sometimes it can also be editor or cinematographer, but someone who identifies as having this lived experience.
And I think, and a point with, and something I've learned, and we have people come to us a lot with projects because of who we are as Blackfella Films, and, having First Nations people clearly own the company. But I think one thing I would say to people is, if you're looking, and what Lauren said, those genuine relationships and collaborations, they also mean having a seat at the table and being equal partners.
Yeah.
And as Lauren says, it's not good enough now to say, oh, we've got an Aboriginal consultant, or we've got a First Nations consultant, or we've got a Vietnamese Australian consultant. I think, we need to really carefully think about how these projects are put together now, and it needs to be a meaningful co-production, and that includes giving away some of your position, because I think if you want people to genuinely commit, I don't think it's good enough now to say we pay you a little fee to rubber stamp our projects. I think you need to approach it as a genuine enterprise together, that you're making something together. And I think that's the shift that certainly I would encourage people, because the reward out of that is you have just such an authentic and great story, and I think your work will be so much stronger for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Completely agree. And it's a really big issue for Screen New South Wales. We take this area of diversity and representation extremely seriously. So if you're working with content and you want to have a conversation with us at an early stage, we'd like to be seeing these conversations happening as early as in development. So if you're coming to us for development, make sure you've got the right people on the team, because we'll be asking the questions. Because as Darren says, authenticity is key, as well as escalating the careers of people from underrepresented groups who haven't always had easy access to to roles, significant and powerful roles in the filmmaking industry. So, Lauren, the completion guarantee.
I get to do the dry stuff. Great.
I can do it if you want.
No, I'm joking.
But it's really just
well, you know what? It's not that dry, Lauren, because then it can add, as we know, on projects, significant amounts of money to your budget.
Yes. So completion guarantors, I think they're probably much more a film thing now than a television thing. And, it is a requirement of our terms of trade that you have a completion guarantor, but people do apply for a waiver, to that. And we do waive it kind of dependent on, how much we're investing, the delivery history and experience of that producer, and whether other agencies, the broadcaster, have agreed to it. So, you could speak to this, Darren, but often on television, completion guarantors are pretty much a thing of the past, would you say?
Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
And I think people should be, eyes wide open about, asking for the completion guarantor waiver, because, I think there's this, view, and look, we asked for the waiver on certain projects, and but there'd be projects maybe that we would consider having a completion guarantor, but I think look, it's becoming a lot less likely, that you would have them, but I guess that's really got to be track record. It's, you have to have an argument of delivering, projects on budget, on schedule, and if not, like, what are the extenuating circumstances? And but I guess, yes, it's becoming less and less, but I guess you'd still have to articulate, because it is government money, about why you don't need to have it. But
and I think it's a particular point for us as well, if we are the only agency investing or, on a film or whatever, where we're kind of the only government money, because, it becomes a highly kind of risky proposition for us. And, if we do waive it, there's other things that we want in place. Like, we want you to have 10% contingency. We want you to have your, all your insurance budgeted and all your delivery items budgeted. And, that you can kind of claim that you will cover any overages that, come up, if you haven't got that completion guarantor in place.
Yeah, exactly. So on the form itself, because some of the subjects that we're talking through are where they appear on the application form. So if you've got it in front of you, we're on about page 13. We're looking at key personnel and key creatives. And this is an area I wanted to ask Darren about, in terms of just how important it is to have the right team. Obviously, the right personality, the right skill, the right experience, but there has to be great synergy, and this needs to be articulated, not just in the selection of the people, but the way in which they describe what they are going to bring to the table from a visual point of view, from a creative statement. And I just think this is a great throw to Step Into Paradise, which is, as we mentioned before, the ABC's feature documentary on Jenny Key. and Linda Jackson, it is sublime. It's absolutely sublime. Talk us through how you went about finding the right people like Bonnie Elliott and Amanda Blue to be part of your team.
I think, and that's one of your key responsibilities as a producer, is shaping and working with the key creatives to kind of, how can we best realize this project? Who are the right people? What are the demands of the project? What's the aspiration for it? So I guess we step into paradise. And thank you for those kind words, Andrea, and your support on the project, another project again. But with that project,
always a pleasure, Darren.
On that project, we really, we had these two bold, vibrant women in their 70s who have been at the forefront of shaping Australian identity through fashion, kind of introducing colour to like our world when we were, to not mimic Europe and, America, and to bring something uniquely Australian. And I guess that was really fundamental. So we thought, how do we realise this kind of incredible Australian story with like creatives? And we thought, well, we're making a show about two formidable, fabulous women over 5 decades. So we kind of went, okay, maybe we should have an all-female team apart from me, but should we have an all-female team make this project? And Amanda Blue, we'd worked with, who's a really strong director. And then I guess it's always good to have that ambition and aspiration. We went for Bonnie Elliott, who's an amazing DOP, who's working overseas in America right now, but she just done Stateless. And I guess that's a thing. If you've got a project and you're passionate and, it's got something distinctive to say, you will get those New South Wales creatives to work on your project. Like everyone said, oh, Bonnie won't do a documentary now. Well, Bonnie jumped at the chance to, she loved that. She loved those women. She loved Jenny Key from when she was younger. So I think all the way through, we had a female editor on that show, but I guess, there's a balance. And then we had the wonderful Charlotte Mars, who's a more junior director and producer. And I thought it was really important to give her a producing opportunity on this show. So kind of the nexus of like having more experienced people with less experience, through opportunity was like a really, and look, the creative process on that film was really wonderful. Like it was so lovely to see it go to air. We had a female composer, Amanda Brown. So like we were just blessed. And I think, that shaping of like looking at the right creatives to work on your project, and giving them something really meaningful to engage with is, and telling a distinctly New South Wales story with those fabulous women. I think that's sort of like a dream team. And when you have that confidence, I guess that comes off the page on the application to to Screen New South Wales, because they see these wonderful creatives. You guys are seeing what they're doing all the time, but I do think shaping that team and being really aware of what they contribute and what they bring makes your application even easier, because their participation speaks volumes then to how you're going to realize the project. And that's what the application really is trying to do, isn't it? Convey the same excitement that other people have for the project to the agency.
Yeah. And Lauren, that's really, I guess the best part of our job is to really absorb every element of an application when we present it to the advisory committee, and to know all the nitty gritty. Talk to me about how you bring everything inside so you can.
And I think you can't kind of undervalue, a really amazing creative vision summary or statement from the team that speaks, different to your Bible or your pitch document, but really, giving us an intimate look at how you're going to make it, what it's going to look like, how it's going to feel, what the tone is, all of those really kind of specifically creative elements, so that when you read the script or the treatment or whatever it is, and you pair it with that creative vision statement, that it's then in you, when you're presenting to the committee, that project, it's like a part of you, and you can kind of pitch it and speak to it in a really enthusiastic way, because, these projects come through and, we spend a couple of months with them, Andrea, and we end up loving them, and they're a part of us, and they become like our little babies in a way. So don't think of it as a little go into Smarty Grants and feel like your box ticking thing. We want to be a part of it with you.
Yeah, dazzle us. That's what we're looking for, and that's what Darren and his team do every time. The applications are just such a joy to read. And because they're so well written and so thoughtful, it's very easy, as Lauren says, is to take the information inside and be able to speak to it from the heart. You know, it's about what's in your mind, but also if you can demonstrate your passion for the project that you were able to absorb through Darren and Helen's articulation, then
and
the
I guess
job's so much easier.
That's where the relationship with you guys becomes so important, doesn't it? Because like getting that sort of feedback on the application materials or this materials you submitted, you know, like none of us were born knowing how to write the great application, but so it is really after feedback, isn't it? Of like getting feedback and what are the gaps and what haven't, you know, and sometimes, you know, I remember earlier on, Andrea, when, you know, in your career, you have those conversations and you're like, well, why isn't that not in your application? You know, like things that, and it's through the relationship that you go, God, well, that's like, you know, you can tell in a phone conversation how excited someone gets when you tell them something, or you know, when we used to be able to have face-to-face meetings, but you know, you can gauge people's excitement. So I guess it's just about, you know, as you're moving through, you know, working with the broadcaster or whoever it is, things that they get excited about, really keeping a note of that and thinking, okay, that's a unique part of my application. So selling the creative merits, I think, is really critical to making your application stand out and be really competitive.
Absolutely. And I think one point that you mentioned, Darren, is that that you can add so much more kind of zing to your application through just conversations, because you can't articulate everything. So making sure that when you have conversations, you just tell us a bit more about the project, because sometimes that anecdote will, you know, work its way into our brains. So we may very well mention that anecdote in the pitching.
Completely.
So it's kind of a smorgasbord of opportunity to sell your film as best as you can. Look, while we're on there, we're getting very close to the end. We've only got about seven minutes to go. So there's a question I wanted to ask Darren in relation to escalating less experienced crew. You mentioned it before with Charlotte Mars, you know, bringing her on board at an early stage to work on Step into Paradise. But tell us a bit more about just how important it is. And also, I mean, if you want to mention the production attachments, which we offer as well. We can get into the nitty gritty, but perhaps just remind us again about the importance of working with, you know, a variety of experience to support the industry itself.
Yeah, like I think we're at a critical time, and you know, the world is having this conversation, you know, around the world. We're talking about, you know, it's flowing from authenticity of storytelling, who should be telling what stories. But I think, you know, as producers, I think more and more, and look, it's, you know, there's gaps in our market. We need more people, and I think we should invest in people that traditionally haven't seen film and television as a pathway. So I think if we can create those opportunities, we've certainly, you know, in the First Nations sector, done that for a long time. And I think, you know, we can see the benefits of that vibrant sector now, you know, with the creatives that are involved. It's really exciting. But I think, you know, opportunities, you know, as I've said, behind the camera and also in front of the camera, I think, you know, going out, putting extra effort into, you know, finding those people or, you know, linking with communities. You know, I just think those relationships will pay off, you know, so much more than you invest in that early stage of your time. I just think that, you know, and not seeing also the diverse person as only relevant to the diverse job. I think we need to take a broader view. I think it's our, you know, it's our good, you know, human thing that we should do is, you know, seek out those opportunities for other people. We've been very fortunate, you know, to have them, you know, and I see it sort of paying back really, that we've been really fortunate to have such, you know, incredible projects to have worked on. So I think, you know, I think we all should be thinking about how do we create those opportunities, spend the time, go out and, you know, see what people want to do. I'm not saying that you have to do all of the work, and it's reciprocal, of course, but I think taking risks on people, you know, people took risks on me in my career early on. I think taking risks on people, I think people have got to also have a hunger and want to display talent. I think it's not just a one-sided equation, but I think, you know, the marriage of those two things of like, you know, taking a risk, giving people opportunity, I think, you know, the benefits of that for all of us are really exciting. And I think we've seen that it works, and I think we all should continue to spend that extra time and go out of our way to really create a broad church of people that participate in our film industry.
Fantastic. Thanks, Darren. That's so clear. I do have a couple of questions. We've got just a few more minutes. I'll give this one to Lauren. We touched on this earlier. The question, this is from Chris. Chris asks, what is the best way to start a new relationship with Screen New South Wales for early developing projects not yet ready for final application? He says he's previously tried standard contact information without response. Well, that's a pity. Before you answer that, I'll just let you know that. Sorry, Chris. Amelia will be putting up our email addresses, so by all means, contact us. Our contacts are on the website, but Lauren, do you want to just have a crack at answering that for Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I think apologies if you went on a wild goose chase to try and get in touch, Chris, but yeah, Amelia will put the emails up there, and there is a kind of generic development production email that comes through to all of us, and then one of us will get back to you, and we can have a phone call, or we might send you some information as a starting point, and then have that phone call about your project and go from there.
Fantastic, thank you. And one more rather technical question from Sean Coyston. I'll give this one to Darren. This relates to financing, so if you could give a succinct answer. 65% total government investment, so that leaves 35% has to come from elsewhere. This is not all going to come from DAs or DGs. This is a feature film question for Darren.
Yeah, well, that's the tricky environment that we're in, isn't it? That, like that really is, that gap of the 35% is getting harder and harder to finance. I guess, like we're seeing people, aren't we, like David Misha, people going to streamers with feature films, I guess, look at the platform, the market will always, how we are set up and the way that it operates is the market will come to the party if they believe there's a market there for you. But yeah, look, I, as a producer, struggle with that. Documentaries are having a similar sort of struggle at the moment. How do you get money for documentaries between 500,000 to $1 million? Like, it's a question of finding that marketplace. Money is getting tougher and tougher. But look, there's always a way to shape a project. If you're passionate, I think you can always shape a project and, really exhaust every opportunity. And sometimes if the market can't meet you, I would say it's good to let go earlier than later, and spend your resources on something else, because sometimes some projects just don't happen for whatever reason. But look, it's really challenging.
Absolutely. And I think it speaks to what we said at the outset, which is it's a highly competitive business, and you really need to have the best people working with you who understand business, who understands the market, who has relationships with the broadcasters and the streamers and the distributors to help get your project across the line. And I think everyone is kind of surprised when it gets across the line in the end anyway. It's tough. So look, I think we're pretty much at an end here. So in closing, I'd just like to say a special thanks to Amelia Carew-Reid, who is behind the scenes here. Thank you, Amelia, for setting us up. A big special thanks to Lauren for coming along and helping to explain the fundamentals of applying for production finance with Screen New South Wales. And a big thank you to Darren for his time and for his excellent pick.
Pleasure.
I think we've still got a little bit of time, Darren, if you want to give a quick plug for your last couple of productions.
Oh, yes. Well, we have Total Control, which I've always wanted to have a show that got the cover of the Woman's Week. And hey,
good. Don't they look gorgeous?
But yes, the 7th of November on the ABC is Total Control with the wonderful Deborah Mailman and extraordinary Rachel Griffiths. So yes, tune in. Second season. It's exciting, lots of drama, great female leads, and celebrating Australia and politics.
Oh, it's fantastic. And what about Series Mania?
Series Mania. Oh, yeah. So if people want a sneak peek, you can. I think you can still log in and you can still register. But Series Mania, which started in Paris, which looks at television series from around the world, showcases the best of. There's an event in Melbourne at ACME, and you can go onto ACME website, the Australian Centre for the Moving Image. You can log in there and you can get a sneak peek 3 weeks early of the first 2 episodes. So anyone who wants to get in before other people, get online, register, and you can see the first 2 episodes. And then you can see me again talking on a camera with Rachel Griffiths.
I love Rachel.
Festival of Darren.
Yeah.
Yes.
Rachel and Deborah in the second season are on fire. It's an absolutely stunning production, and I congratulate you. So in closing, I'd just like to remind us that we're all very lucky to be working in this industry and to create stories to share with audiences. I did want to say a bit of a thank you to all of you and express my gratitude personally to everyone for your efforts during the lockdown, your restraint, your sacrifices, your shared commitment, your vaccinations. And this is, we've all worked together to get out of lockdown. So I just wanted to say thank you on behalf of Free New South Wales. So for now, keep wearing your mask when you're outside and stay safe and laugh a lot and remember to always be kind.
Thanks to you,
See you,
Andrea.
everyone. See you guys.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.
Bye.